Welcome to the Business Speak Podcast, where we take everything you need to know about being successful in business and make it easy to understand. Whether you're a longtime business owner, newer to this entrepreneur stuff, or hoping to run your own company in the future, you've come to the right place. Featuring your host, professional accountant and business guru, Mr. Chill. So relax and have some fun with us as we journey through Business Speak, the language of business, simplified.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Business Speak podcast. I am your host, Mr. Chill. You can call me Corey. Actually, you can call me a lot of things if you want, but we'll go with Corey's good too. I'm excited to welcome you to this episode of our podcast. I got with me a guest who I think I would be safe in saying I know better than any of the other guests we've had on the show. So thank you to Laura Hill for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you, Laura.
My pleasure to be here.
Now, full disclosure, well, maybe partial full disclosure. So Laura's last name is the same as mine. That could just be a really fun coincidence. Or it could be because we're related somehow. Or it could be because we're married. We're going to go with that one. So yes, Laura's my wife, and she's been asking for a little while to come on the podcast because she has some area of specialty that she's gotten herself into that she's pretty excited about and pretty passionate about, which is cool. Now, I could probably introduce her pretty well. I don't know if I'd do it as much justice as she wanted. So I will give her a chance to introduce herself, and then I'll fill in gaps and tell fun, hopefully mostly true stories that will follow afterwards. So Laura, again, welcome to the podcast. What would you like to say? How would you like to introduce yourself?
I guess I would start with we've been married for 21 years now, and we have 6 kids, and so that keeps
that many?
that keeps us both pretty busy. And the big exciting thing that I got myself into is becoming a certified coach. So I'm a transformational life coach and have my own business now called A Million Dreams Coaching. So that's been a very exciting endeavor for me, and I've been working on it for just over a year and a half. So definitely learning lots and loving the person I'm becoming in the process.
Okay, now I think the term coach, especially when applied to business coach and possibly other areas, has become quite common and maybe overused a little bit. When you consider yourself a transformational life coach, how would you explain what that means? What does that involve?
I like to explain it as the transformational part being that I have the opportunity to help people transform the way they think. In a lot of ways, it's how they think about themselves. I think that often we are really good at holding ourselves back because of the things that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And so having the opportunity to work with people to help them see things from a different perspective and teach them tools that help them to be more confident and overcome the things that have been holding them back for so long.
Okay, and you mentioned transformational life coach. Now, like I said, I've heard from or talked to or aware of lots of business coaches. How would a life coach, in your opinion, be a little bit different than a business coach? Or just from your vantage point, how does your specialty kind of differ?
So when I'm working with people, we focus on 4 domains of life. So business is definitely part of it in the sense that one of the domains is vocation. So we have the opportunity to work together in helping you grow your business or do better in the career that you're in. But we also focus on the other aspects, which would be your health and your love and relationships, and then also your time and money freedom. So they all kind of work together for a full spectrum success.
Okay. So you might have kind of given a partial answer to my next question, but for all the people listening to the podcast and thinking, well, I'm a business owner, how does this topic relate to me? Maybe just to give them a teaser, what would you say? How does what you do, how can it help the average typical small business owner?
I think that with business owners, and I can say this from my own perspective, as far as having my own business now, the things that we're telling ourselves is what is holding us back. So one of the quotes that I have on something that I use for advertisement is, what if the only thing holding you back is you? And how would you show up if you knew that you were enough? Because I think whether it's business or life in general, often it's ourselves that hold us back. And so if we are able to overcome the thoughts that hold us back, then we can be far more successful in our business, and we would be going for things that we often tell ourselves is maybe out of our comfort zone or our realm of comfort.
Okay, I want to come back to that concept in a minute, the things that we tell ourselves holding us back. I think there's a lot of cool things we could talk about there. But let's dive into something I'm always curious about. And I think I know most of the story because I was there with you through most of it. But I think it might be useful to hear your vantage point on it. The name of your business is A Million Dreams Coaching. Tell us about the name. Why did you settle on that name? What does it mean to you? What is it kind of picture does it bring to your mind?
Well, I do have to give you the majority of the credit for that one.
That's not even why I asked, but okay.
So yeah, you suggested it when we were going through a list of a whole bunch of different options. And the reason I settled on that one is because to me, A Million Dreams is symbolic of the endless possibilities that we have. On the back of my business card, it says living limitless. And I really like that concept because there's so many options for us that we are not aware of unless we give ourselves permission to go there, give ourselves permissions to really dream. And so to have a business name with A Million Dreams, it just opens up the possibilities to create whatever you would love to have in your life.
Now, I don't know if you remember this or not. You probably do. But I cannot hear the phrase A Million Dreams without wanting to sing the song from the Greatest Showman soundtrack. Because that's instinctively what I think of is every night. I won't sing it because I don't want people to tune out like right now. Anyways, but yeah. And even if you just kind of consider the premise of that movie and show, it's from the time the P.T. Barnum is a little kid, he's got these big, big dreams that he wants to see come true and doesn't know how to kind of make that happen yet. Doesn't quite know how to make it reality, but he kind of feels inside that he's destined for something more and bigger. Mm-hmm. And so maybe.
And I like that you said that part too. When you use that example of P.T. Barnum, he started with so little in his life, and in even just preparing for today, looking over different examples of I guess famous people that are well known that started off with very little or things that a lot of people would give up on. It shows that our history doesn't have to determine our future. What has happened in the past or how we were brought up or raised or the things that have happened to us, they don't have to determine where we can go moving forward.
So your past does not have to determine your future.
Yes.
Okay. Like it. I promised to revisit a concept, but one more thing before we go back to that concept. I know you're very passionate about what you do, and I think a lot of that has to do with what you would describe as your why. and maybe your why has multiple components, and maybe we'll kind of break it down into pieces. But what to give the 2-minute version of your why? Why did you decide to become a transformational life coach? Why did you make this change in your career and your life? And just what part of the why story do you want to share as we get going?
All right. So I don't know if you remember where I was at when we first met as far as shy came. In high school, I had people that would make comments about the small amount of conversations that would come from me. I have, for the majority of my life, been a very shy and quiet person who would more likely avoid conversations. I definitely did not like being in large groups of people and would kind of hide in the back if I was in a group of people. And so it's really easy to ask myself, why would I go into a career where I'm now speaking in front of a lot of people with the goal to speak on stage in front of hundreds of people and have the opportunity to work with groups of people? Why would I choose a career like that when I'm not a person who enjoys talking with people? So I would say that it started with the concept of that feeling of there's something more for me. So growing up, I always wanted to be a mom. That was, people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for me, it was always a mom. And so I felt really blessed that I was able to be a stay-at-home mom for 16 years. And I loved having that time with my kids and being a part of their life so much. But I also noticed in that time that I got to a point where I felt like I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was beyond being a wife and a mother. And people would ask, well, what do you enjoy doing in your spare time? And I didn't know anymore.
You're like, what spare time?
Yeah. But the things that I had enjoyed doing before I was a mom, I didn't do anymore. And so I didn't know the answer to that. And that was one of the first things that kind of stuck out to me as to that feeling of wanting something more. And then when all of the kids started in school full time, we had talked about me coming and working here for the receptionist and having the opportunity to work together. We were both pretty excited about it, I think. So all the kids were in school full time and I started working here. And then it was just a few months later that our son had some big challenges in his life. And that came in the form of mental health. And so instead of being able to come here every day and work, I ended up spending my days trying to convince him that he should go to school. And sometimes that would take a couple hours, sometimes that would take a couple days. And when I was able to convince him to go to school, sometimes that looked like me sitting in the hallway while he was in his classroom, or me sitting in the classroom with him right beside him so that he felt, I guess, safe to be there. And then it got to the point where he wasn't even able to go inside the classroom anymore. And we sat out in the hallway and did schoolwork together in the hallway. And then COVID hit. And I think I'm one of the very few people who was grateful for COVID.
You might have a cohort of identifying people that are the same, but
COVID gave us the opportunity to have him do his schoolwork at home and still be taught by his teacher, because that's when everybody was online schooling, and that was exactly what he needed. And it was through that I realized that he needed to be home, and that brought in some new factors for me to have to consider. I had found that when I was working here, I was learning new things about me. I was learning new tools, I guess. I was learning how to do bookkeeping and doing all these things that I'd never done before. And it brought a new sense of purpose to me. And all of a sudden that didn't feel like it was an option anymore. And I felt torn. I did not realize this was going to get emotional. I felt torn between being a mom and having that opportunity to work full time. And so it was actually you that kind of started my journey when you invited me to attend a workshop with you. And it was at that workshop that I realized that some old feelings that I'd had from many years ago were still there. I had had the opportunity to listen to Bob Proctor speak.
And for those that don't know who that is, who's Bob Proctor?
He is, I would probably consider a kind of a life coach also, but he's a well-known motivational speaker who inspires people to go after their dreams, I guess. I don't remember as much about
respected people in
yes,
your field.
A very respected person in this line of work. And I just remember watching his, it was a couple-day event, and feeling like that was something I wanted to do one day. And those feelings had been there before, but I just didn't feel like that was something I could ever do. That wasn't definitely not in my comfort level. And I found it was really easy to talk myself out of it. So when those same feelings came back a couple of years ago when we went to that workshop, this time I knew I had to do something different, because in that 7-year space, nothing really had changed. And I knew that I was looking for more. And so I had the opportunity to work with a coach myself. And in doing that, I saw changes in myself that made it so I wanted to be able to help others in the same way. I had confidence that I hadn't had before, and it's just interesting how you're getting like a whole big life story here. I struggled in school, and so I had told myself after I graduated high school that I never wanted to go back. And it's been many years. I don't know that I need to give a specific date because that would really age me, but it's been many years since I graduated high school, and only just recently has those thoughts of going back to school come. And I don't know that those thoughts would have come without the confidence that I found in the last couple of years. I guess the other part of my why is that I had been feeling stuck before going to that workshop. I was overwhelmed and torn because I didn't know how to have both things in my life. I thought I had to choose one or the other. I wanted to be home and available to my children as they needed me, but I still wanted to do something that felt like it was for me, something that was helping me to grow and become better. And it was through the things that I was learning that I realized that I could have both, and that I did have the abilities to create a life that would have both in it. And so being able to work from home has been a blessing, as now there are 3 kids that do school at home, and it's fun, sometimes challenging, but it's fun being able to have my own little space where throughout the day, as they need to, they can pop their heads in and check in on me or see how things are going. And I hear I love you a lot of times throughout the day, so that's a bit of a blessing. But it's those things that make me want to help others, because I've seen the difference in myself.
So you made me think of 3 things, and in saying that, I'm hoping I can remember all 3 by the time I say them all. One of the things, just in case you're curious, we survived. I maybe even say enjoyed working together. They say sometimes that working with family, especially your significant other, can either make or break you, and I don't think it broke us, so that was good. I don't know if you would agree to this. I don't think you thought that doing receptionist work and bookkeeping work was sort of like that's what gets me excited. That's what I'm passionate about. But you mentioned that you kind of learned some things about yourself in the process, so that was cool. Mm-hmm. I think it's fun if you guys could see what we have for our respective home offices. It definitely leaves a little bit to be desired. We have a decent sized house, but we also, as Laura said, we have lots of kids and they take up all of our spare rooms. And so the only way that Laura has an office and I have a home office is we've converted our closets into home offices. Laura got the bigger closet, so Laura has a slightly bigger home office, but it's still a bit of a cramped space. But it's been pretty interesting to see it transform from a place that holds shoes and like hanging clothes to a place that we both have got chairs and desks and computers and books, and it's going to transform the little closet spaces into our little bit of heaven home office. So yeah, I just feel like I had to paint a picture because I don't know if people appreciate exactly what you've been able to create out of that space. And I know it's not the ideal because you don't have windows and a few other things, but considering everything, I think it's been a pretty good setup so far. And as I kind of suspected, I kind of forgot the third thing I wanted to say when I was going to get around to it, so we'll see if it comes back in a minute. I guess one of the things that might be worth asking you is we had the beginning of this season of the podcast, we had a guest on, actually her and her husband both came on, Amanda and Brandon Simmons, talking about something completely different. But one of the things they love about what they do is it allows them to be parents with their kids and work from home and kind of have I'll call it the best of both worlds kind of way you mentioned. Now, so I think it's cool that you've kind of got this is maybe a different avenue of a way that a mom or a dad who wants to kind of be very much still present in the lives of their kids can still run a business or work from home and still be present in their kids' lives. And this is just another way that you could do that. Now, one of the things I think that intrigued you about what you do specifically is you weren't necessarily having to reinvent the wheel. You didn't have to create a brand new, never before seen product or service. In fact, I think you got certified through a company whose one of their things you liked about them is that they kind of help walk you through how to run a business and how to get it set up and provide you with a lot of the talking points and materials and other stuff that you may need to kind of get going so you don't have to invent it from scratch. But I guess how have you found that balance to be? You're at home, but you're working. Have you found that to be a nice blend? Have you found that to be a challenging experience? Tell us about how that's gone for you.
Sometimes it can be a little bit of both. I love having the kids there so that if things are sometimes not going the way I would love, one of the things that makes me feel very happy is playing games. And thankfully, we have a few children that love playing games. So I love that at any point throughout my day, if I feel like I need a little pick-me-up or even just a break, sometimes I use it as a reward. I might say, okay, I have to make this number of calls, and once I do that, then I can go and play a game. But it gives me a chance to just, as needed, both for my sake and for their sake, make adjustments on how my day might look. And the flexibility to plan my day according to what their needs might be or schedules that might have me taking them to other places. But I know that I have to remind myself sometimes that it can be easy to just kind of get sucked up into my own little space where I'm busy and focused, and I really do love what I do, so it's easy to just kind of get stuck back there. But making sure that I I'm aware of having time with my kids and enjoy when you come home. So
Now, I will say, as a bit of an aside, just so people can appreciate it, I was always warned, because I'm told I might have been a troublesome teenager, can't confirm that, that when your kids get to be a certain age, that they would pretend they don't own you, or like pretend they don't know you, pretend they don't like you. Mom, Dad, please don't hug me in public. Mom, Dad, please don't do this. You're embarrassing me. And I would say, maybe you agree, that for the most part, our kids have never gotten to that spot. I mean, our oldest are 20, 18, and 16, and they still seem like they're not embarrassed to be around us. They'll still, especially Dallin, multiple times throughout the day, will come up and just give you a hug and say, I love you, and give you a kiss. And none of them seem to be, my mom and dad are boring, my mom and dad aren't cool, my mom and dad are embarrassing me. I feel like we got kind of lucky in that regard, that none of our kids have really gone through that. And any luck, none of the other ones will. But yeah, I think that's kind of a fun thing for you getting to work from home, because you get to kind of have the kids come in throughout the day and not only do stuff with you, but just constantly little pick-me-ups throughout the day. So let's go back and revisit the thing I said we go back and revisit a little while ago. So you mentioned that a lot of the stuff that you do, and this is my words, not yours, but is helping people, I wish I could remember exactly how we said it, but basically people's thoughts are what's primarily stopping them or holding them back. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like when someone comes to work with you and you're, or just imagining your dream client, and you find that this is a common occurrence where it's their thoughts, their own limitations that are holding them back. What are you seeing? What are you finding? What do those hurdles look like for your common business owner?
When you first started asking about that, the first thing that came to my head is something that I share called the results formula. And I think it's a useful tool that we can use to kind of see how our thoughts are affecting the results that we have in our life. And so the results formula starts with our thoughts, and we look at how our thoughts affect our feelings. And so when I'm talking with people, I like to ask, how do you feel if you lose your phone? What are some of the feelings that come when you think, I can't find my phone? There's like just an immediate panic that comes. And as soon as you realize that your phone is in your pocket, or sometimes, I don't know if it's happened to you, you realize that your phone is actually in your hand and you're talking on it. But there's just this immediate sense of relief. And so it's easy to see the connection between the thoughts that we have and the feelings. So if we're having happy thoughts, we're going to feel joyful. And if we are thinking scary thoughts, we'll actually notice our heart starts to beat faster, and we have that feeling of fear in us. And then our feelings then impact our actions. And so if you think about how you would go about your day, the actions that you would take, if you're feeling happy and confident and like you can take on the world, those actions are going to look very different than if you are feeling sad and discouraged or depressed. The actions that you take are not going to be on the same level depending on how you're feeling. And then based on the actions that you're taking, those are the results you're going to see. And so when, I guess a tool that I would use from this is when the results that I'm getting aren't the ones that I'm hoping for, it's a reminder for me to look back and think, okay, what are my thoughts in this area? What is it that's stopping me from getting to where I want to be because of the thoughts that I'm having?
Would you, I know this is kind of a question out of left field, but I'm just curious what your perspective would be. Would you say that just human nature is to kind of generally think limiting negative thoughts, or do you think it's also maybe a product of the just times that we live in, or the connectivity to social media, or like, what would you say is probably a contributing or multiple contributing factors to why people might just naturally have a tendency to think the worst, think negative, think them limiting themselves in their thoughts?
I think that naturally as humans, we have that tendency to think worst case scenario. I've heard it said something along the lines of, if you think back to like caveman days, when you were really trying to just survive, everything seemed like a potential danger. And it's easy for us to continue in that same thoughts now, where we're always looking around to see what dangers and what things are coming at us that we need to try and keep ourselves safe from. And I think I just lost my train of thought after that. Sorry.
No, and just to remind you, the question I was just asking is what you think is the reasons people tend to have such negative thoughts about themselves. And you were mentioning that you think it might be just sort of basic human instinct, but is there more to it than that, you think?
I think it also plays into how we're raised. I think that if we are taught growing up that failure is bad, then we're naturally going to avoid the things that we think we're going to not do well at. And if we have a different look at what failure really means, then it changes our ability to see our opportunities as good things. We have a different relationship with fear, I guess.
You made me think of a conversation I had with a previous guest named Drew Woolsey, who we brought on to talk about the concept of being an entrepreneur. And one of the common debates in most classes where they talk about entrepreneurship is, are you born with it or is it like learned? You either have the qualities of being a successful business owner or not, or can they be taught? Nature versus nurture kind of concept. And that's kind of what you would remind me of what you just said, which is it might be both. We might have natural instincts to think of what can kill us and what can hurt us, and kind of protection going back to primal concepts, but it also might be a product of our environment.
Mm-hmm. I think there was an example that I was looking at in the last couple of days where, and it's a similar thing that I heard from a while ago, that we'll just say there was a family who every night at dinner time would sit down at the table together, and the father would ask, how did you fail today? Something along the lines of that. Like, what failures did you have today? And it was a chance to look at failure as a different thing, like that it wasn't bad. It was what did you learn from the experiences that you had today? So that you could see that failure isn't something to be afraid of, because failure is part of what makes us grow and learn, and it's actually a tool that helps us become, and not something that we need to avoid.
So that's probably one of the key things you help clients kind of reframe in their mind, is what failure looks like or what failure is. And maybe just as important as what it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if nothing comes to mind, that's on me. You can totally blame me for that. But one of my favorite parts of what I hear you talk about when you meet with clients and do workshops and stuff is I don't know what you'd call it, but for me, it's like the stories of famous people who overcame incredible odds or obstacles or hurdles to become the successful people that they are. And I'm sure there's probably certain names that come to your mind, but everyone from like actors and actresses to musical artists to sports people and other stuff, there's just like, man, they were born in this situation, or they came across this issue, and right when, person after person told them that they were no good or not cut out for whatever they're going to do, and then they go in to prove them wrong, and now they're like top in their industry for what they do. I'm not explaining it nearly as well as you do, but I guess my question is, can you think of any of like the main ones that stand out in your mind as like motivational stories of these famous people? Most people recognize that maybe we don't know all the heartache and failure they went through to become the successful people they are. Does any specific names or stories come to your mind?
There's a few, and I think often, I guess I'll share a couple examples. So Big number wise, two that really stand out in my head from the different workshops that I've shared these at. The people who started the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, they took their idea for their first book to publishers, and it was rejected over 100 times. And right there, like for me, I'm thinking, well, how does somebody even get to 100 times without thinking, obviously this must not be what I was meant to do. Often I would find myself feeling that, I tried something 10 times and maybe that means I'm just not meant to do it. But one of the last ones that I share is the Starbucks. If for no other reason, just to look at the sheer number of it. When he came up with this idea for this new coffee place, he took it to get loan applications and was told that there was no market for his kind of coffee. And he was rejected over 200 times. And it really makes me think differently about the number of times I should try something before I say, okay, obviously this just isn't meant to be. I think that when you are passionate about something, it doesn't really matter how many times somebody says no. It's a matter of whether or not it's something that you still feel passionate about. If you can look at what it is that you're trying to do. So I help people create visions or dreams of what they would love in their life. And if you can look at that vision and say, yes, this is still what I want in my life, then you just keep trying, because that's what is, I guess, calling you at that time. It's something that you feel passionate about. Keep going until you find the right way.
I believe, I might get this wrong, but I believe Howard Schultz is the name of the guy that started Starbucks.
Yes.
And I was just thinking to myself, let's say it was just for demonstrative purposes, let's say it was exactly 200 times, or it was the 200th time that it finally went through.
I think it was 244.
Okay. So then what would have happened if he had given up after 243?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, obviously a lot of people wouldn't be so rich, and a lot of people would have a lot less coffee and other stuff, maybe. But I mean, no one would consider him a failure. No one would consider Starbucks to be a dumb idea or a lost cause. But obviously there's some kind of inner, maybe you said it's passion, but just determination that I believe I have something really worth pursuing. And even if nobody else believes me, eventually it's going to come. Now, let me ask you the opposite side, which is probably a little bit harder to answer. But is there a point where an idea is just not worth pursuing? And how would you know the difference? Is every idea, if you stick with it long enough, going to work well? Or are there some ideas that are wise to abandon early on? And how would you advise someone of that, knowing the difference?
I'm not sure if this is quite the answer you're looking for, so you'll have to tell me if this doesn't quite answer it. But when we look at creating a vision of what we want for our lives, we get this general idea of what we want in those 4 areas that I talked about earlier. And then there's something that we call it the 5-point vision test. And it's 5 questions that you can ask yourself to help you to know if this vision is right for you. And I think that if at any point you're starting to question whether or not this is something that you should continue pursuing, you can ask yourself those questions. But I think the biggest thing is when you think about the thing that you're wanting to go after, is it something that still gives you life? Is it something that makes you feel happy and there's energy to it that is positive? It's not something that's constrictive. It's something that lifts you up and makes you excited for the day. I think if the answer to does this still feel like something that I would like to pursue, if that answer is still yes, then you just keep going.
Okay, I'm going to try something here, and hopefully he'll forgive me, though I won't use his name. So he's likely to listen to this podcast, and so we'll see if he realizes I'm talking about him or not, because I won't use his name. I have a friend who would, by all accounts, consider himself to be an average just business owner. His business isn't remarkably successful. It pays his bills. It gets him through. Nothing to like write home about. Nothing to like go into kind of magazine. Not going to win any awards. Not going to be some top like growth chart. I've had many conversations with this particular person about his situation, and he has told me so many different times and so many different ways that he really doesn't enjoy what he does, other than the fact that it's a way to provide for his family. But whenever I try to have a conversation with about what he would love, what he would like, he always has a reason why it won't work. He's like, well, I'd really like to do this, but I've tried and it didn't work. Or I'd really like to do this, but there's no way I could financially make that work. Or I'd really love this, but, and it's always the, I'd really like, but. And I'm not saying that you can necessarily solve his challenges and help him through, but I can't imagine he's the only one that would say, when you ask someone, what would you love? And they probably have no problem telling you, but then there's all the reasons that it can't happen because. So let's back away from my friend for a minute and just kind of go to a generic concept. When someone comes to you, or when you're working with someone who has no problem helping to conceptualize and explain what they would love, but then proceeds to tell you all the rational, logical reasons why it's not possible, where do you go from there? How do you help someone pass that seemingly insurmountable hurdle?
All right, so I definitely have like a whole program that I take people through to help overcome those things. So trying to figure out the amount of like information to share here. But the things that are coming up, I would call our paradigms. They're the things that are our old way of thinking, the things that kind of our old patterns that keep us comfortable. And when we have this idea of a new job that we could do, and we think, oh, I can't do that, I'm going to lose all my benefits, or I can't start that, I'm too old now. Those thoughts are the things that are going to come up to say, don't get too big here, stay in this spot where you're comfortable. It may not be a place that we love, but it's a place that feels comfortable.
Safe.
It feels safe. So then we just take some time to dig into what it is that you do want. And there's a spot at the beginning where it's important that we don't look at the how it's all going to work out. Because you want to give yourself that permission to really dream big and see where it is that you really would love to go. I think when we give ourselves permission to really dream big, then the new thoughts come and new possibilities arise. And once we establish what it is that we would love and we make that decision, the decision is the key part, I think, because once the decision is made, then you start to see opportunities coming that you wouldn't have noticed before. And I think that's the fun part, is just being open to seeing where are these blessings going to come that are going to make this possible.
You may be familiar with it. Seems like a side tangent, but just a fun little anecdote. There is a band, I believe they're called Ryan Shoup and the Rubber Band, which is kind of a fun name. But they have a song called Dream Big. And I think the main part of the chorus is, and when you dream, dream big. And that's what you made me think of. If you don't know the song, you should go look it up, because maybe it'll become like your next theme song at your next event or something.
Yes.
Anyways, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to go through the trouble and effort of dreaming, and dream big then. And yeah. Now, this might sound like a hard question. I'm not even sure if I know how to ask it, but I feel like a lot of people might associate writing down a dream or vision or like what they would love synonymous or similar to setting goals. And a lot of people have very negative feelings and connotations with the concept of setting goals for a similar reason to what we already said. If they set a goal and they don't meet it, they feel like a failure. What's the point of setting goals if I'm not going to meet them? I'd rather not set a goal than set a goal and fail at it. So I'm not even sure the question I'm trying to ask, I guess, but what you work with people on, writing down a vision and describing what you love is not quite the same thing as setting what are often called SMART goals that have like specific time measurable things, and then you like regular track your progress and stuff. What you do with working with people is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a vision is definitely different than setting goals. Goals are something that you can track, you can measure. A vision is something that you create that you don't know how it's going to happen. It's kind of the starting point. It's from your vision that you can create goals, but your vision itself isn't the goal. It's creating, I guess, kind of creating your possibilities. And once you get clear on what it is that you want, then you can break that down into, well, if, for example, if my goal is to make $100,000 in a year, or maybe for some people in a month, you would take your vision that you've created and you would break that down into goals of, okay, how much money would I need to make in this amount of months to be able to reach this vision that I've created for myself? And you would then take the goals that you're creating and break them down into smaller pieces so that they're things that you can work towards and they're measurable.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. Now, again, just to make sure people are still tuning in, in theory, at least every business plan would recommend this. Every kind of successful business owner probably recommend this, that every business owner should have a company vision and a company mission statement. And I guess when I think about the difference between the two, the vision would be like a future state, like an ideal future version of that business, kind of like you're describing an ideal future version of that person. Maybe let's go off on a different tangent for a second.
Maybe before you do that,
sure.
A thought that just came. So when we're looking at a vision, one of the ways that I would say it looks different than a goal is a good vision is going to be very specific, very detailed. It's, I think, to make your vision really strong, I like to think of it as like putting in your five senses. When you create a vision, you want to be thinking about, what are you seeing when you look around? If you put a time frame on it, like if 3 years is a good amount of time because it gives you a chance to go big without your brain saying, well, that's not possible, because it's far enough in the distance that you can see it. So if you're saying, okay, it's 3 years from now, what am I seeing? Who am I with? What am I feeling? If you can paint the picture with what you're tasting, what you're smelling, as much as you can put detail into it, the clearer your vision will get, and the clearer your vision gets, then the more opportunities will come to you because of that clarity. And that, I think, is one of the things that makes it different from a goal. Your goals aren't going to be specific to the feelings that come because of it. The goals are your way to get to something, whereas your vision is where you want to be coming from.
So then to follow up on that, then, is a vision more effective when it's in picture form?
Yes.
Versus words?
Yes, because people tend to think in pictures.
So the concept of a vision board would be ideally a lot more pictures and a lot less words.
Yes.
Okay. The question I was going to ask you was...
I am going to say, though, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting again.
No, you're good.
Even having the words on your vision board, though, it's still something that your mind can see. So, yes, pictures will be a little bit of a stronger feeling. But I know that in the past, when I've done a vision board, I've even had it so that I had a goal of selling this much products or something. And I would put little sticky notes that would be equal to each thing that I was trying to achieve. So I sold this much product, a sticky note, and then this much product and a sticky note. And so each time that I was able to accomplish that sticky note, then I could take that off and put it somewhere to say I've achieved this now. And it still was that visual thing that I could see to remind myself of what I was working on. But I would say that visual, as far as pictures, is stronger.
Maybe I told you this many times. I think I've told the kids this a few times, and they thought it was really clever and kind of ridiculous at the same time. But when I was a kid, my teachers would say, and there was a common phrase then, I don't know if it's still said, that a picture was worth 1,000 words. So like all these really big chapter books, just take every 1,000 words, put in a picture, and it'd be way easier to read. I could get through those chapter books, no problem. But it never worked. The question I was going to ask you, and maybe we'll kind of head towards a wrap up as we get there, is who inspires you? I mean, you could look at that in a few different ways. Who inspires you to become the future version of yourself you want? Who inspired you to start this career path? Who do you look up to who's very successful in your field that you kind of just like, I'll know that I've achieved at least a key part of my vision because I will be like this person, or I will have, like, who inspires you? And I know it's going to be nice for you to say me, but you can't say that because this is people like for real. Who inspires you in doing what you do? Who do you look up to?
There's two people that come to my mind right away. As far as people that I look up to, my first answer will probably always be my mom, because she's the person that taught me how to really care for other people. And I think that is a really key part of being a coach, is that desire to care for people. Business wise, I would say, hold on, I got to put in a plug.
Diana, if you're listening, that was for you. Anyways, carry on.
Business wise, one of the biggest mentors for me has been Stacy Berger. She's the one that started me on this path, and she's the one that helped me find the company that I wanted to be certified through. And she's kind of that person of, if I can reach this kind of milestone like Stacy's reached, then I know I'm doing good.
Okay, cool. As we kind of wrap up the podcast today, any kind of other thoughts, any other kind of key principles or concepts you want to kind of introduce or teach about that we haven't covered yet?
I think one that kind of backs onto the one that you just asked would be the importance of putting yourself in some form of structure of support. I think there's probably far too many for me to name, so I won't even try, but having a group of people that you can talk with regularly that believes in you, who believes in your vision, the goals that you're setting for yourself. Having those people who can help you kind of remember why you're doing what you're doing, or just on those harder days, someone who continues to encourage you. I would say that it's just important to have yourself surrounded by people who will help to keep you going and raise you up and believe in you when you might struggle to believe in yourself.
Okay. I'm not going to push back on you. That's the wrong word, but I'm going to just elaborate on this and ask you to elaborate on this a bit. So what about somebody, like, because you've described a situation where you've got close family, you got your own family, you've got close friends. What about someone who's kind of running a business and they kind of feel all by them lonesome? Maybe their family's passed away or just lives far away. Maybe they haven't married or don't have kids. Maybe they don't really have a church community or anything like. And maybe the answer is they need a coach like you. But like, who do those people go to? Where can they go to find that structure of support that you just mentioned?
I think having people in the field that you work in is important. I would say that I have a group. I actually have a couple different groups that I meet with on a weekly basis. And some of them, it's almost a daily basis. And they're people that I've met through the program that I've been in. And we're able to keep each other accountable. And when those hard times come up, because they will, hard times always come, you're able to bounce ideas off of each other. And there's, I think, even comfort in knowing that you're not the only one struggling. And then, just, I would say, if you don't know who to have as your structure of support, look at the people around you that inspire you, and the people who are like the person that you want to become. Those are the people that you want to surround yourselves with. Hopefully that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I think that does. Okay, so maybe let's kind of wrap up here, the last couple of questions. If people have loved what they heard, but maybe, like most people, they only remember or absorb a small percentage of what they might hear. If people get nothing else out of what we've talked about today, nothing else from what you've shared, what do you most want them to take away? What do you most hope they've taken away from our conversation today?
I would say a couple of the thoughts that come to mind is reiterating your history does not define you. Don't let the things of the past decide whether you can or can't do something. And that I guess you are worthy of any dream that your mind can dream.
And maybe it'd be worth people learning that song from A Greatest Showman and they just sing it over and over and over again on repeat. If people want to get in touch with you, Laura, what's the best way to do that? How do they get in touch with you if they're interested in reaching out to you, learning more about your services you offer, or just understanding more about what it is that you do? What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, people can check out my website. It is amilliondreamscoaching.com. And I also have a Facebook page also called A Million Dreams Coaching. And I guess just watch for events. I'm holding events, and so I'm trying to advertise events that people can attend to get a better understanding of what I do.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on the podcast today. I know you were a little bit nervous before we started, but it seems like it's gone well, and you've kind of seemed like you've gotten comfortable with it, which is great. I know you mentioned this at the beginning, but you mentioned for much of your life, you probably would have been quite happy to just be a wallflower. My words, not yours, but just, I don't want to be in front of people. I don't want to speak to people. I don't know if I even like people. and then you're kind of going all in the other direction, and you so yeah, it's probably kind of neat for you to even kind of see your own growth over the last while in that regard. So yeah, I want to thank Laura Hill for being a podcast guest today on the Business Speak podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to the Business Speak podcast featuring Mr. Chill. Be sure to subscribe and add us to your podcast library to ensure you never miss an episode. We love hearing from our listeners. If you have a topic or question you'd like us to discuss, would like to be a guest on our show, or would otherwise like to get in touch with us, please visit our website at businessspeak.ca. Thanks for listening to Business Speak, the language of business simplified.